Hello there, my name's Christopher Lee, but you might know me as LEGO Zebra on some various LEGO sites. I was asked by Beyond the Brick to showcase my collection for you today, and I'm super excited to share it all. I've been collecting LEGO since I was 6 or 7 years old, and now I'm a rising junior in college, so it's been growing for many years. In fact, on Brickset.com, which is a website to kind of aggregate and rank your collection, it's ranked the 18th largest in the world. Now, one thing to get out of the way first, unfortunately, a substantial part of my collection is actually not with me right now. It's at my apartment in college, which means that a lot of stuff that I really like, such as a complete collection of LEGO Ninjago minifigures, a complete Star Wars Stormtrooper and Clone Trooper collection, which for some reason I didn't take a picture of, and a complete Harry Potter minifigure collection won't be shown just right now. Also there is a UCS Star Destroyer, a UCS Death Star 2, and a UCS-styled Hammerhead Corvette. Well, with that out of the way, let's get started. We'll kick off the tour of the LEGO room with a view of the entryway to the basement where all the LEGO is stored. Right here I've housed minifigure frames from all sorts of themes that I like, of course including the blind bag collectible minifigures, which starts here with the iconic Series 1 and goes all the way down to Series 9, 10, and so on, all the way up to the current series. I've also got the other random series displayed here, like the Unikitty series, the 2 Simpsons series, the 2 LEGO Movie series, and the 2 different Disney series. One of the coolest things that I have displayed here are the regional exclusive sports series, like the Team GB 2012 Olympics UK minifigures, which you can see here, as well as the Team DBF German minifigures, which I have on display with them because I figured they fit together. Before we move on from this area, I put together a quick display of LEGO's newest IP, the Monkey Kid theme, which I really like the quality and style of the minifigs, and I'm super excited to see what comes out of this theme in the future. So what's probably one of the smallest minifigure displays here is one for Avatar: The Last Airbender. I've only included it because I'm a big fan of the show. It was a super short-lived theme with only 2 sets. I believe it was outsold by SpongeBob, so that's why it was only there for so short of a time. But I really like the show, and I figured I'd give it some place in the collection, so that's why it's there. Moving on to original LEGO themes, I've got a big wall display for space minifigures. You can see there's some gaps of stuff that I still need to fill in, like these aliens and whatnot, but most of the stuff is there, and you can see I've also left a space for the new orange classic space figure that's coming out this October. I believe it's in a book. I'm super excited to get that, and I really love how LEGO's been kind of giving us new colors of these. Moving on to here, we've got, of course, all the agents, Alpha Team, Ultra Agents, you name it, including the CMF version of Dash, which I really liked. It was a nice nod to the older theme, which you can see it's clearly supposed to be him. And of course, we've got Exoforce and LEGO's original Dino themes here as well. So while we're on the topic of original themes, we've got everyone's favorite Johnny Thunder. And you can see I've included the 2014 variant from the LEGO Movie, as well as the collectible minifigure variant from last year. Going all the way down, we've got kind of its spiritual successor, Pharaoh's Quest, as well as all the underwater and underground themes. So up to here, we kind of hit some of the licensed themes, and of course there's 2.5 frames dedicated to just Marvel. And the way I've ordered these figures is kind of in comics first, and then MCU appearances. You can see I've left some spaces for the new Summer 2020 Iron Man and whatnot War Machine figures here, especially because those are clearly supposed to represent the missing MCU suits. You can see there's a gap for them right here, but other than that, I have basically every single Marvel figure that's ever been made, excluding the original Spider-Man line, because that's an entirely other collection in and of itself, and I have not gotten a chance to collect that. So moving on, we've got some villains, and of course the Overflow board, which is topped by Thanos, and moving on down to some of the lesser-known villains that aren't featured in the MCU just yet. Before we move on, I've got a quick display dedicated to spooky original LEGO themes, such as Monster Fighters up top and Hidden Side at the bottom, although I'm not quite sure what I'll do once the newest wave of Hidden Side stuff hits. Moving on down here, the next, I'd say, 3 or 4 frames are dedicated purely to Star Wars. And let's start, of course, with the most important one, the Jedi frame, going in order of the movies from Qui-Gon to Obi-Wan to Anakin and so on. You'll notice that it's featuring the very popular, and I guess very rare now, Ahsoka figures. I'm looking forward to getting the new one this summer. And we go all the way down, including the Old Republic and so on. Up here, there's a board dedicated to droids and scum and villainy of the universe. One of the coolest things I have here is actually the original Watto figure, which only appeared in a pod racing bucket, so he's quite hard to obtain. I've been lucky enough to own him, as well as the original Watto. So of course, as there is light, there will be darkness, so we've got a frame for all the Sith of the universe and the villains. So we've kind of gone in chronological order here, and going past that, we've got the droid army, Sis, and the Empire. Unfortunately, as I mentioned, some of my collection is elsewhere, which is why there's so many slots missing here for Imperial officers, such as the ones that came with the UCS Star Destroyer. One of the rarest figs I have in my collection is this Cloud City Boba Fett figure. This figure was really revolutionary at its time for including side arm printing and leg printing and so on. And it's one of the most rarest and expensive figures out there. Moving on to the next Star Wars frame, we've got a wall dedicated to the other protagonists of the universe who aren't Jedi. You can see that I've included the crew of the Rebels series, the Solo crew, Rogue One, and of course Princess Leia, Lando, Han Solo, and so on, including all of the pilot figures that they've made throughout the years, which are quite a few. Over here, it kind of shifts to the Resistance side of things, including one of the rarest Resistance figures, which was a bomber who was only included in a rerun of a set from 2017, the Resistance bomber. But before we move on from these licensed stuff, I wanted to showcase really quickly the Overwatch minifigures. Now, I'm not a huge fan of the game itself. I actually don't know really anything about it, but I was just really impressed by the quality and standard of these minifigures. I get that some of that is due to the licensor wanting to accurately represent their characters, but these figures are really above and beyond a lot of characters that LEGO puts out nowadays, which is why I figured they deserved a spot on the wall. You can see there's some really cool figures there. Over here, of course, is a showcase dedicated to my favorite theme, or one of my favorite themes, the Middle-earth lineup with Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit. I own every single minifigure from that series, and I really wish that it'll return in some form. I mean, Harry Potter came back, so can this. Maybe when the new TV show comes out, but you can see that I've put together all of the figures from this lineup, and I feel like the theme was too short-lived and deserved more. Moving on to here, we've got 2 frames dedicated to the DC universe, and unfortunately, the DC collectible minifigs that came out earlier this year are not with me at the moment, so there's a lot of gaps, but if you ignore that, you'll notice that there are a ton of Batman figures. I think that's almost 4 full rows of Batman, which you can see there, which is really insane. I mean, at least half of that is because of the LEGO Batman movie, but anyways, continuing down, we've got the other DC superheroes and members of the Justice League, as well as some spaces left over for other villains, which you can see here. I always love to celebrate original LEGO themes, so of course we've got 2 more in the form of Chima and Nexo Knights, which you can see here. But moving on from the minifigure wall displays, let's take a look at some of the stuff hanging from the ceiling. This starts out with the most classic of classic spaceships, the Galaxy Explorer in all its glory, and moving forwards to the Futron era of stuff, but I've spiced in some Space Police 3 stuff because this color scheme is basically the same. We've got Blacktron, Blacktron 2, Space Police 1 and 2, and so on. I'll let the camera do the work, and you can see all of the spaceships that I have hanging here from LEGO's classic eras of space. Some of my favorites obviously are Blacktron, but also Mtron, and you can see up here right now there are a fleet of Space Police cruisers. Moving on to the side, we've got the very popular Ice Planet 2002 line, with its mothership here and 2 of the scout ships, as well as the UFO line and the Mars mission line, with the humans chasing the aliens, of course. So let's move on down from the LEGO Space line to the Marvel line, which you can see here. I've got pretty much all the important flying vehicles from the Marvel Universe. We've got a collection of every single Quinjet that's ever been made, as well as the awesome helicarrier model that was released to tie in with the movies. You can see the first Avengers Quinjet here, and as we pan around, we get into the Guardians of the Galaxy territory. Moving on to one of the side shelves, we've got a shelf full of Star Wars stuff that I can't hang, as well as a ton of LEGO space bases and robots, mechs, vehicles, you name it. You can see them in all their glory here. We've got 2 full shelves of that. You can see the second shelf right now. And I used to actually have a very large space base in the middle of my LEGO room, but that's been replaced by something much, much bigger and more impressive. So for now, all the land-based space stuff is kind of delegated to this section here. Above them, we've got a collection of the ATTE walkers, which includes a mock of an ATTE, which I got the instructions from Brick Vault, which is a really impressive mock, a lot more fragile than the regular ones, of course, but it's a really, really cool model that exemplifies the shaping of the ATTE really well, so I recommend it. And of course, you've got Captain Rex's ATTE from Rebels too. Moving up here is one of the rarest sets I own, the original 375 Yellow Castle, which is an icon for LEGO, as well as the mini build of the castle that came in a GWP a few years back. Of course, up here I've kind of put together all of my different castles, although it's quite hard to see them. There are quite a few there, and it goes all the way to the back. On the top shelf, we've got a collection of walkers, so ATSTs, ATDPs, and so on, which you can see all collected here. Moving on to these adjacent shelves over here, we've got kind of a miscellaneous section here. There's, of course, some Atlantis, some Orient Expedition, whatnot thrown in, including a LEGO House exclusive set from Bill in Denmark, their tree that's featured in the house. Back here, I've got a collection of AT-ATs and ATM-6s, although I'm not quite sure what I'll do when the summer 2021 comes out because I have absolutely no room for another one. Also here is a collection of the LEGO Elves sets. I really love the aesthetic that they put together for these sets. And in the very back, you can see the Buyer's House from Stranger Things, which is why, of course, I have the minifigures displayed here as well. You can see it all the way in the back there, and the collection of minifigures right here. Moving down a shelf, we've got pretty much miscellaneous random stuff. There's some Pirates, some Technic, Harry Potter, whatnot shown here, and a Chima set that didn't fit in with the other ones. Down here, we've got some Star Wars play sets, including the Cloud City set from a few years back, the Master Builder set, and that trend continues to this very narrow shelf here where it's kind of hard to see, but you can see a ton of different sets from Palpatine's Arrest to Snoke's Throne Room. Over here is some more miscellaneous stuff, although the majority is Exoforce vehicles, as well as some more stuff like the Vikings headquarters and so on. I've made sure to include the Dewbacks from Star Wars as well as Obi-Wan's Boga for some animal representation. Down here we've got the dragons and creatures from Elves, as well as the Mixels, and you can barely see the Air Temple from Avatar right there. So moving on to this shelf here, it's some more miscellaneous stuff. You can see the minions in the back, as well as these superheroes playset style sets on this shelf right here. Going down from there, we've got some more stuff like the Jabba's sail barges throughout the years. And up here, I've put together a ton of different vertical standing rockets that I do not have currently hanging. In the back, you can also see Jabba's palace above the Rancor pit. Over here are some Adventurers and Monster Fighter sets, topped off by a Castle set. But now let's move on to the main collection. Starting off with the elephant in the room, we've got a massive collection of Star Wars starships, starfighters. If it flies, you name it, it's probably up here. While I don't have an 100% complete collection, it is generally pretty complete and includes a ton of these Star Wars vehicles that LEGO's released since 1999. I think we can start off with some of the most impressive models in the room, which are, of course, the Ultimate Collector Series sets, starting off with the very first one from 2000, the Red 5 X-Wing Starfighter. Alongside it, you can see its more modern counterpart, the 2012 UCS Red 5 X-Wing Starfighter, which features a much more cohesive color scheme and overall better building techniques, as is expected. But while we're talking about early UCS sets, this is another one of the first UCS sets, the TIE Interceptor. You can see it's still using the trademark blue that LEGO used to use for TIE fighters, and we haven't actually gotten an update of this model since. Moving on from that, we've got the original UCS Naboo Starfighter, one of the smallest UCS sets, but probably the shiniest. Going on from there, let's go all the way around to the original Ultimate Collector Series Star Destroyer. Unfortunately, I don't have the newest one with me right now to compare it against. It'll probably go up right next to it when I bring it home. But you can see right here I own the old gray model of the Star Destroyer, but it's there in all its glory. Of course, you can't forget the more land-based UCS sets like the AT-ST and the General Grievous Sculpture, but moving on from them, you can see that we've also got a large collection of Slave 1 vehicles, starting with the UCS one, and going on all the way down to the very first one. In fact, the only one missing here is the one that I don't have built right now, which I believe was the 2007 one. Moving on from that, we've got all the Imperial shuttles that LEGO's released throughout the years. You can just see how colossally massive the Ultimate Collector Series one is here, and how it absolutely dwarfs even the more modern, full-scale, LEGO-scale ones. Down here, you can also see that I've included some mini builds, as well as the Imperial landing craft, which are a very similar type of build. You can also see with these two the distinction between the old and the new, and just how far LEGO building styles have come in the past few years. So moving on to that, we've got the Ultimate Collector Series TIE Fighter, and while we're on the topic of TIE Fighters, let's take a look at some more. Featured here are several of the very impressive minifigure scale TIE Fighters from Brickvault. I'm continually impressed by the style and quality of their builds and how sturdy they are for mocks, especially this really amazing TIE Defender, the TIE Bomber, which is actually the only TIE Bomber model I own. I didn't even bother getting the old one because that one was so good. And of course, a standard TIE Fighter. In fact, you can just see how much better these are from official LEGO builds when you compare the TIE Defender up here to the 2009-2010 TIE Defender, which is very, very lackluster in comparison with the custom one. But of course, I've got all the official sets here, as well as including the Rogue One TIE Striker, some other 2012 regular TIEs, and moving on all the way around from there, we've got, again, the UCS one, the First Order TIE Fighter, the one from the Resistance show, and even the Junior-styled TIE Fighter, which I've snuck in on the side right here. So moving on from there, we've got Darth Vader's TIE Fighter, and you can also see that I've got the Ultimate Collector Series Darth Vader's TIE Fighter in all of its glory here. Another set that didn't get a re-release, but was actually pretty decent for the day. Moving on, we've of course got the classic playset style Death Star, which I have hanging here, as well as the Ultimate Collector Series Super Star Destroyer, which is one of the longest LEGO sets. It's almost the whole length of the table I have underneath it. And next to it, you can see actually one of my favorite custom builds alongside the other minifigure set scale Star Destroyers. This is the Imperial Interdictor, which I got the instructions for off of Rebrickable. One of the few models that actually really looks good from all angles, including the bottom, which is not an easy feat, especially when you compare it to the official LEGO sets like the Super Star Destroyer here, where the bottom leaves much to be desired. Actually, that's one of the biggest downsides of displaying models hanging, is that LEGO often does not, of course, put details on the bottom of the sets, meaning that if you look up at them, you're going to be missing a lot. Over here, I've also got a collection of the various Jedi Starfighters from the Clone Wars and prequel era, which is actually my favorite era of Star Wars, probably because of the excellent Clone Wars TV show, but a little bit underrepresented in LEGO form. But of course, we've got the gunships, a custom dropship, again from Brickvault, right next to the official set version of the dropship, still carrying the AT-OT Walker. Moving on from there, we've got some of the Jedi Starfighter with hyperdrive rings, alongside some of the other Jedi Starfighters that I wasn't able to fit with the rest. Also featured is the Ultimate Collector Series 10-4, featured alongside its contemporary versions from 2009 and 2019. I've also got the UCS B-Wing right next to a B-Wing custom build, again from Brickvault, which is very impressive and screen accurate. Moving on from there, we've got many, many snowspeeders. LEGO seems to love making these, from both UCS versions all the way down to the smallest micro-scale version from 2002, and everything in between. Even the Sandspeeder and the Junior Snowspeeder is hidden up there. So moving on to Y-Wings, I've got both versions of the Ultimate Collector Series Y-Wing Starfighter. You can just see the difference in builds from the old to the new. And as well as that, we've got all sorts of Y-Wings all hanging in formation here. LEGO's made a ton of Y-Wings over the years, and it is really satisfying to kind of see them all flying in formation, which you can see here, from the very first Y-Wing all the way to the newest Resistance Y-Wing, the red-colored one. Moving on from that, we've got, of course, the newest UCS A-Wing that just came out, as well as a stack of A-Wing Starfighters, including yet another custom build from Brickvault. I really love Brickvault Starfighters, they're really great. Of course, how could I forget the UCS-scaled Mandalorian Razor Crest, which was built from instructions purchased online, And for now, we'll have to do until the official LEGO set comes out, which of course I've pre-ordered, but is much smaller than this. I am a massive fan of the Ninjago Masters of Spinjitzu TV show, which is why the other half of the ceiling is dedicated to showcasing moments from literally every single season of Ninjago plus the movie. Starting off, we've got the pilot seasons here, and it's a little bit out of order because right behind them we have some flying modules featured from Season 7, Hands of Time, which you can see right here. Pivoting all the way around, we can see some of the Secrets of the Forbidden Spinjitzu and Prime Empire sets, which I've kind of grouped together because there weren't too many flying stuff from there, as well as the flying vehicles from the LEGO Ninjago movie, which were very impressive sets, although the movie was, well, we don't talk about the movie. Moving on to here, we've got some of the first few things that I have hanging, which was the Possession style sets from Season 5. Over here, I've got kind of a general Ninjago thing, which features some scenes from Season 10, March of the Oni, as well as some scenes from Season 9, Hunted, with Firstborn flying alongside there, and some of the early Rise of the Snakes seasons as well. You can see that I've displayed both Ultra Dragon models together, and as soon as I get my hands on the legacy version of the original Destiny's Bounty, it will definitely be displayed right up here as well. Moving on from there, we've got some of the Skybound sets featured here with the Sky Pirates and Lloyd's Dragon swooping in from above. Now let's jump over to Season 4, Tournament of Elements, with just the very few flying vehicles they had, as well as a small section dedicated to Rise of the Snakes and Legacy of the Green Ninja, Seasons 1 and 2. And as we go all the way around here, we can see a display dedicated to Ninjago Rebooted, with Zane's hovercopter and the Mech Dragon over there. And finally, I've grouped together every set related to Master of the Mountain, Season 13. You can see the Skull Dragon here, and Wu's Battle Dragon up there, as well as the Skull Sorcerer's Dungeon, the Firestone Mech, and Zane's Creature. One final note about Ninjago, one of the things I love about the theme is the Legacy line, because you can really see how LEGO's building styles have just evolved and drastically improved over the years. Some of the best examples are from the 2012 era to the 2020 era, and you can really see how the models have just improved to depict the same set. Over here is a quick look at some of the legacy land-based vehicles, which we'll take a closer look at when I showcase this entire shelf as a whole later in the video. While most of the stuff I have hanging are Star Wars and Ninjago, I also have an area dedicated to all the LEGO Batman vehicles, starting with the classic 1966 Batman helicopter, and going all the way up to the more modern Justice League movie and DCEU variants. This includes all of the comic vehicles, pretty much everything that Batman owns that flies. While we're on the subject of Batman, let's take a look at a shelf containing all of his various land-based vehicles, minus the 1989 Batmobile, which is at my apartment. These go along with all the Batman-related buildings, which we'll see later on in more detail. Going on from there, we've got a display dedicated to the LEGO Movie and its sequel, which featured some really inventive and creative locations and vehicles, as well as some more realistic space stuff from various different themes, and some miscellaneous things that I just enjoy, like the Exoforce Aero Booster pack right there. Moving away from stuff that's hanging, we've got monorails. This includes the airport shuttle, and I think that these are some of the best sets that LEGO's ever made. It's such a shame that they don't have the patent, I believe, for the tracks anymore, because aside from the airport shuttle, we've also got the Unitron and Futron monorails. You can notice that I stacked the Futron monorail double high just to go above the Unitron monorail, so both of them could kind of fit and condense together in the same space. Alongside here, I've got some various Mars mission space vehicles. While we're on the topic of stuff on the top shelves, here's a look at my pirate ship collection. I'm by no means a completionist in this category. I'm missing a ton of pirate ships. This is really just stuff that I like the look of, or some vintage stuff that I feel was valuable to have collected, like the original Black Seas Barracuda there. And what wouldn't fit up on that shelf is the newest Black Seas Barracuda, or the Pirates of Barracuda Bay model, which I actually do prefer in the island formation right here. We've got mechs. I am a big fan of mechs and LEGO mechs in particular, so over here is a collection of, I believe, is literally every single mech or robot vehicle that LEGO's put out ever. This includes every single Exoforce set. You can see I even have the tower from Exoforce up there, as well as the big gate from the Exoforce base all the way back right behind there. I also included some Exoforce combiner models here because you can't have enough mechs, and this kind of overflows over to some Ninjago stuff over here, as well as the many Hulkbusters that LEGO's made kind of off to the side. And I didn't even have space for the newest Monkey Kid mechs, which I have kind of in their own area here, along with the other Monkey Kid sets. You can see the Demon Bull King mech all the way in the back there. Right here's a collection of basically every single Ninjago set that's come out that doesn't fly. I've kind of ordered them by Ninja, starting with Kai, Zane, then Lloyd. For this shelf, you can see some of the team-up vehicles in the back, like the Ultrasonic and Stealth Raiders, as well as Jay's vehicles moving over here, and I've tried to put the legacy versions and the old versions next to each other. You can see down here we've got some villain vehicles and Cole's vehicles, as well as the 2 legacy drills. Moving on down here are some of the bigger Ninjago sets, like the Diesel Knot, the Land Bounty, Zane's Tank, the Skull Truck, and so on. And then moving on to creatures and some other miscellaneous sets that did not fit with their respective shelves due to height. So going on from here, we've got some Ninjago buildings, keeping with the Ninjago theme. I love the temples and structures that they come up with, so I've dedicated 2 whole shelves to showcasing them, which is this shelf here and a much larger shelf up here that is kind of highlighting the Ninjago City set up at the top, as well as the Ninjago City docks and the monastery set right here. Moving on to these shelves here, I have some of the tallest LEGO models on display, like the Ideas Saturn V, Tower of Orthanc, and so on, and a display that is purely for LEGO Batman playsets, which range from Arkham Asylums throughout the years all the way to the Batcave. Down here, ignore the buildable Zurg, but I've got some of my mocks, including a mock featuring a location from Ninjago Season 5, the Cloud Kingdom, which is actually one of my most recent mocks. I don't mock too much in system, but the ones that I have done are here. Moving on from here, going down to the shelf below it, we've got some miscellaneous stuff like the Grand Carousel and Jokerland. So once we go past this shelf into here, we've got some of the LEGO Minecraft sets. Now, I just very recently started collecting LEGO Minecraft and bricklinked a ton of the older sets I missed out on, so I don't have a full collection by any means. But I've got a drawer of Minecraft stuff over here that's pretty full. I really enjoy how these sets are basically pretty modular and fit together and kind of connect together, which is why I love displaying them all in the same place. There's a second shelf here of Minecraft stuff with, of course, some space for new additions down the line, including some of the newest stuff that just came out a few days ago. Down here, I have a shelf filled with all sorts of LEGO animals. I believe I own basically one of every animal that LEGO's ever made, from dinosaurs to chickens. The only animal I don't own is the goat, because I'm not paying $40 for a goat. But moving on from that, there's all sorts of horses. I love the big cats that they've come out with in recent years. Got those from Bricks and Pieces, and as you can see, tons and tons of horses, and all of the Velociraptors LEGO's made for their various lines from Jurassic World to the LEGO Movie. Of course, there's a ton of T-Rexes up here, all the flying creatures in Smaug from The Hobbit, and as well as a bunch of smaller creatures that I have displayed on base plates. Now, these aren't all the animals in my collection. I do have a bin of other smaller animals that I don't have on display right now. This shelf here and the one below it house basically every single LEGO superhero set that wasn't deemed worth hanging from the ceiling. If you open it up, you can see it's absolutely jam-packed with all of the various helicopters, trucks, Mighty Micros, and flaming golf carts of the Marvel and DC line. Although I do buy most of these sets for the minifigures, I like some of them, like the Javelin set, of course, right here. And you can see that there is basically everything that they've come out with on this shelf right here. Right above these shelves is a massive collection of the various different LEGO Hogwarts sets that they've put out throughout the years. I don't own every single one, although I do own many of them, stretching all the way from the massive Hogwarts model from a few years ago, all the way back to the original Dumbledore's office, which you can see up here, and the original Hogwarts Great Hall set. I've kind of tried to scatter in some of the many different creatures from the Wizarding World. You can see there's Aragog lurking around the branches of Hagrid's hut here, as well as Buckbeak the Hippogriff. And moving on from there, you can see the Troll from the Troll Bathroom Attack set, and some of the Fantastic Beasts sets. I've also hung some of the flying carriages from the Harry Potter line to kind of complete the display and make up for some wasted space. Moving to the left of the Harry Potter display, we have a display for tons of different LEGO modular buildings and other large-scale buildings. You can see that this is actually double stacked, although it's a little bit hard to see some of the older ones like the cafe corner stacked in the back there. At some point I'll find a better display for these to show them off more clearly, but as of right now they're double stacked here and it's a bit hard to see. I've also included the stuff like Ghostbusters Firehouse Headquarters, some of the Avengers Towers, and a Ninjago building that was overflow. Moving on down to these shelves, I actually used to collect city sets. I don't anymore because they all kind of started blending in for me, but from around 2000, I'd say 8 to 2011, I bought almost every single city set, and you can see the results of that in this shelf and the shelf below it. There is a ton of different vehicles and basically just standard vehicles. You can see here the shelf above it has a ton as well, so you can kind of see the building styles from each of these different eras. I've also included some of the generic racers stuff that LEGO's put out throughout the years, and some other spaceships and vehicles, Technic buildings and Technic vehicles and whatnot scattered throughout here. Here's a look at basically every underground themed LEGO set. I own all the Power Miners and Rock Raiders sets, which you can see here, as well as some of the Racers sets like the World Racers line that they came out with. And of course down here are just some kind of loose parts and scattered stuff for Bionicle accessories. Moving on to this shelf are basically all of the hidden side sets that would fit. Most of the taller ones I have displayed elsewhere, but here's all of the kind of mid-scale ones, as well as the excellent Chinese New Year sets. I especially love the kind of Chinese New Year meal set, which you can see all the way at the bottom there. I was lucky enough to obtain that while I was visiting Korea, so I did not have to pay the crazy Bricklink fees for that. And going above that, we've got some of more LEGO's original themes. This is all the Nexo Knights set that they've come out with. It's really nice to kind of see the whole color scheme, besides one, which is Jestro's mobiles right there. But it's really nice to kind of see the color schemes of these blend together, like the rock area and the lava area and the knights all the way in the back there. Moving up, one shelf above the one above this one, it is the Chima sets. This is basically every Chima set that I could fit that is vehicle-based. These land-based Chima sets are in another part of the collection, but you can kind of see the different animal vehicles and influences here. And moving on to this shelf, it's kind of a miscellaneous bits and pieces shelf of stuff I couldn't fit in their respective themes, like the castle stuff. Right here is a really, really cool custom creation that you can get the instructions, I believe, free online for, with a moving LEGO model. It's designed by the same guy who did the pop-up book and stuff for LEGO Ideas, so a really great designer. And you can see the motion of this model, which is really, really satisfying to watch. Moving on to the centerpiece of the room, this is the Neptune Discovery Lab set from the late 1990s Aquazone line, and this is a massive custom creation inspired by that aesthetic. Now, I can't take any credit for this build whatsoever. I purchased it from an amazing mockist named Peter Carmichael after he displayed it at BrickCon last year, but there are so many intricate details to kind of look at in this build, especially you can see with this working monorail, there's all sorts of different lights and oil derrick features and movement, and you can see that I've kind of tried to spice this up with some of my own things as well. I've added some of the LEGO creatures like the creator shark there, and different underwater action-themed creatures as well. As we circle around this model, you can see there's a docking bay for the monorail, as well as all sorts of other tons of details like a squid that I added to the model attacking. Of course, there is the motorized oil derrick right here, and there is a turret to fend off the squid that can be moved around and articulated every which way. Up here, there's a large crane that, of course, can be moved around, and there's all sorts of really interesting details and vibrant colors that really drew me to this model, including a section that lights up and a nice detail of a showdown with an aqua shark right in the bushes right there. One thing I really like about this are the very small details, like the little vehicles, whatnot, they have peppered throughout the scene. I really like this vehicle and this other vehicle right here that kind of embody the aesthetic of the Aquazone vehicles while making it something new and making use of new parts. While we're on this side of the room, let's take a look at the other LEGO models I have displayed here, like the Fantastic roller coaster right next to the Pirate roller coaster and the Joker Manor roller coaster all the way in the back there. I've also got some Bionicles featured here, apart from my main Bionicle collection, because they are simply too tall to display on those narrow shelves. Also here with the Bionicle theme, I've got the vehicles from the Cardanui Ignition arc, which of course feature Toa Ignika, which is the body that the Mask of Light fashioned for itself in the swamp. While it might not seem obvious by looking at my collection as a whole, I am a massive fan of the Bionicle line, and I really am invested in the lore and storyline behind it, which is surprisingly deep and complex. You can see here that I have the full collection of every single Bionicle set that's ever been made, including Gen 2, well really every single action figure set that's been made with Construction. Starting off with 2001 here, going down to 2002 and 2003 with the Borak, Toa Nuva, and Kadak and Gadak, 2004 with the Toa Metru and Vaki here, as well as the accompanying Matoran, and 2005 with the Hordika, Visorak, and so on. Going on to 2006's Ignition Trilogy, with featuring the Paraka, of course, and the many titans from the line. 2007's Mari Nui Arc, the underwater themed sets, which actually include one of my rarest sets, which is Leslovic and Karzani, which I was very lucky to be able to find sealed at a toy shop, which was one of the craziest finds of my life, to find those really rare sets sealed. But moving on from the Mari Nui arc, we've got some kind of various miscellaneous vehicles down here that didn't really fit or didn't have space to put elsewhere, as well as the 2008 Carda Nui arc and 2009's soft reboot with the Glatorian. And down here, we've got, actually, one thing you might notice that's missing is Toa Matanui. I'm actually personally not a big fan of that set. I actually own a few of them, but I broke them all apart for Mox, which is why he's not here. But moving on to Gen 2, controversial opinion, but I believe that these are probably the best Bionicle sets that have ever been made. I absolutely adore the CCBS, or Character and Creature Building System type sets, and I really enjoy the potential that these sets had and the immense detail and variation between the Toa. Because before this point, the Toa had essentially been clone builds and everything was the same with just different armor and mask pieces. But these really make an attempt to differentiate the Toa and make their silhouettes unique, which I really appreciate in action figures. You can see I was such a big fan of the line that I actually had Ikimu chromed by a now defunct Bricklink store, Chrome Block City, but I had him chromed and he's all shiny and looks really majestic in that armor right there. Going down here, you can see the second wave of Toa sets, which were unfortunately a bit more standardized than normal, but I tried to fix that with modding every set like Onua, which you can see here. You can see these skull villains as well, which have been also heavily modded, and one thing you might notice is that while I do not collect Comic-Con exclusives, I do collect just the Bionicle ones, because those ones are much less, I guess, expensive than the minifigure ones, and I do like Bionicle as a theme a lot, so that's why I collect these ones from the New York Comic-Con and the San Diego Comic-Con, respectively. Moving on, down here I have the unofficial Makuta Combiner built right here. They never released instructions for this, so I had to reverse engineer it from pictures. And I also purchased a 3D printed mask from Shapeways, which you can see right here, the Mask of Ultimate Power. It's such a shame that they never made this an actual mold, but I was able to get a pretty decent rendition of it from there, so I'm pretty happy with that, of course. And going along all the way to the Star Wars Construction sets, which absolutely tower over the Bionicle ones. It's actually really funny seeing just the scale, looking at Ikimu over here compared to Chewbacca, just how much taller these are. But all of these shelves are dedicated to the Star Wars figures, and of course, eventually we have to get to Hero Factory, with the first wave of Hero Factory featured right here, all the way up to the Hero Factory 2.0 and 3.0 sets with the advent of CCBS, and Hero Factory's best line in my opinion, which was the Breakout line. Of course, down here I also have featured the Brain Attack lines from 2013 and Invasion from Below lines from 2014, respectively. You can see every single Hero Factory set displayed in all their glory here. Up top, we have a collection of the Winter Village LEGO sets, and I often take these down to put in a Christmas display upstairs, which is why they're in a very easily accessible location, as well as shelves with rows and rows of Brickheads characters, with, of course, space for more because LEGO seems to keep on putting more and more of these out. The bottom shelf here is dedicated entirely to the LEGO Dimensions theme, which was very, very interesting to see all sorts of weird and random licenses being translated to minifigure form when there would probably be no chance of getting them in any other way. I really do like the theme. The game was okay, it was quite buggy, but I do like seeing them all collected together. It was an interesting concept which I feel hit at the exactly wrong time to put out a Toys to Life video game when the trend was kind of declining, but I'd be curious to see if LEGO ever tries anything like this ever again. Right here, moving on to the shelves on this side of the room, we've got 4 rows of Lord of the Rings and Middle-earth styled sets. I really, as I mentioned before, enjoy this theme and hope it makes a comeback someday. You can see I've kind of tried to group them by theme. There's some more peaceful locations here like the Hobbit Hole and some elven sets and Lake Town and whatnot, as well as some of the more exciting locations like Helm's Deep and the Mines of Moria. One of the nicest things I have here is Shelob hanging from the roller coaster up there, which is surprisingly stable for how it looks. Moving on to this half of the collection, the majority of these are a combination of LEGO's original themes, as well as some of the more obscure licensed themes and everything in between. We start off with some of the classic Western sets like Fort Lego Rado there, mixed in with the Lone Ranger sets, which also kind of fit the same aesthetic. Down here we've got some underwater sets like Atlantis and Aquazone, which you can see the bright color schemes stand out in the back there, as well as the Aqua Raiders sets and Aqua Sharks and so on. Down here, after some miscellaneous stuff, we pivot to some odd exclusives, like a cruise ship exclusive and the Target, I believe it was a gift card bullseye exclusive, so some weird stuff over here. Of course, we've got the Time Cruisers line, which was a very strange line in the 90s, and then the Agents, Ultra Agents, and Alpha Team sets, which are featured in these 2 shelf boxes here. Up here we've got all of the Jurassic-styled sets, the Jurassic World sets, Dino Attack, Dino 2010, and the Dino sets that came out a few years back as well. So, moving on to the top, we've got some Star Wars locations, like Endor up here, Hoth over here, and clone turbo tanks on this shelf. There's some more miscellaneous stuff down here, like the LEGO Movie Police stuff, and as we move down, we've got all sorts of siege engines in this shelf. Over here are some of the oldest sets I actually own. Actually, that gearbox there is literally the oldest set I own from 1970, as well as the Family Homemaker set, and this set, which features minifigures before there were minifigures. So you can see that they don't have arms, have featureless faces, and are a very, very interesting oddity to look at. And of course, we've got the Family Homemaker style set here. After a brief look at some of the Carnival and Fairground sets LEGO's made, I have a shelf dedicated entirely to gimmick sets from Ninjago, like the arcade pods, dragons, dragon flyers, spinners, airjitsus, whatnot. Personally, I think these peaked with the newest Spinjitzu sets made for the first wave of Legacy, but that's just my opinion. Another feature on the top shelves of the room are the Taj Mahal, which you can see all the way up here, as well as 2 different haunted houses from Monster Fighters and Scooby-Doo. Right here is a UK Mixels promotional bag, which I somehow obtained from a store. Also, while we're on the topic of large LEGO models, we've got the large Disney castle here with a Ferris wheel, the Jurassic Park gate, and the Disney train house. Right in that empty space will come the new Haunted House amusement park ride, which should be coming to my house anytime. I believe it was back ordered and I missed out on getting it fast enough, unfortunately. And as we move down here, you can see some miscellaneous Space Galaxy Squad stuff and some Star Wars vehicles. A nice touch here is the newest Hot Rod GWP displayed on top of the original Hot Rod set, which is what it's referencing. Also here you can see some of the various creator expert vehicles and some unbuilt stuff. I think that's another UCS Red 5 and the old Sandcrawler. Over here are some of the Indiana Jones, Adventurers, and Pharaoh's Quest sets, featured alongside some of the short-lived Prince of Persia sets, as well as more miscellaneous stuff like creator expert vehicles and the MTT here. These 2 shelves are dedicated entirely to trains just stacked on top of each other, as well as a massively packed shelf full of villain bases and vehicles from Agents. Over here are all of the Ideas sets, except for the Curiosity Rover, the only Ideas set I don't own, unfortunately. But you'll see all of the other Ideas sets here in all their glory. You can see like the Tron Bike, Doctor Who, Mickey and Minnie Steamboat, and so on. Moving up here, there's some more idea stuff as well as the town plan set from 2009. And then there's some of these Star Wars buildable figures and such. You can see just the difference between the 2002 Yoda and the Yoda from last year, 2019. It's a big difference. And then there's just some more idea sets here, plus the crowdfunded Forma set, which is a very unique and interesting oddity. Alright, now that we have the shelves covered, let's take a look at the centerpiece of the room and the stuff kind of surrounding it. So I've got some architecture stuff here, as well as the Star Wars Technic figures from 2002 to 2003 there. Over here I've got a very small minifigure display of Blacktron-themed minifigs, which was a very classic space sub-theme. I love the aesthetic and how they keep referencing that in the CMF series. Going on all the way over here, we've got the colossal Eiffel Tower sculpture set from a few years back, which is absolutely massive and goes almost as tall as the Super Star Destroyer. Besides that, we've got the old creator Ferris wheel, as well as a few of the Fabuland figures from the very interesting Europe-exclusive anthropomorphic animal series. Surrounding here are some more architecture stuff, including the Lego house and a Technic supercar, as well as the USS Constellation set, which is one of the few pirate ships I don't have on display with the rest of them. So, after looking at these other architecture sets, you might be wondering what's in all these bins, and well, the answer is just raw unsorted bricks. So pretty much every one of these shelves is just absolutely packed to the brim with all of these different bricks. Unfortunately, I mean, I got these from friends. Usually I don't take apart Lego, so this is just very generous gifts from friends and people who have outgrown Lego, and you can just see how deep it goes. I'm in the process of trying to sort all of these based on a very helpful guide online, although it is a very, very daunting task to figure out how to sort them. You can just see exactly how many of these shelves are just filled to the brim with pieces, and then some of the shelves over here I actually had sorted by kind of element type and color. I know sorting by color is not the best way to go, but I originally had it sorted by color when I got them, so I figured I'd keep it that way for some. You can see some more elements sorted here. As well as here we've got a bin full of printed and stickered elements. So these are all sorts of decaled elements from various sets that I found broken apart in my collection, as well as some other miscellaneous stuff in this bin. Down here we get to the raw figure collection. So we've got torsos in this big bin here. We've got all sorts of different legs here that I have sorted. And then we've got different headgear, hair, headpieces, all sorts of stuff right here, as you can see, including all visor elements and whatnot. Also some stuff that you can find here are just all sorts of heads for figures. I have the licensed ones on top and the non-licensed ones at the bottom, but all sorts of heads just in case I ever need to get them. Alongside here, we've got some neck, leg, and wing accessories. So like I've got some fabric wing stuff, as well as, of course, I have the capes, different wing pieces like this, armor, which you can see this Nexo Knights one here, and so on. And here are some other duplicate collectible minifigs that I just have scattered throughout my collection from either messing up on blind bags or army building them. While we're on the topic of minifigs, let's take a look over here. First of all, I've got a ton of stands for the UCS Star Wars sets, which I have hanging, all kind of jammed together within this shelf here. But I also have, with minifigures, I've got bins and bins of minifigs. Here are the leftover Ninjago figures. This is entirely filled with those, and the original spinners in that case, as well as some kind of standard minifigures that are not licensed here, so action themes and city and whatnot. In this Ziploc, you can see I've kind of put together all of my castle figures. So all of the different castle figures from all throughout the years are here. At some point I'll make a wall display for them. And then there's some pirate stuff there as well. In this bin here we've got licensed figures that I don't have on the wall. So that's like Toy Story, Indiana Jones, and whatnot, as well as some duplicate superhero stuff here and there. And here we have a ton of different Lego accessories for minifigs. You can see this whole big bin full of all sorts of different accessories from various different Lego themes. Swords, sides, nunchucks, weapons, carts, whatever, you name it, they're there. Some more color sorted bits down here, and just some miscellaneous stuff at the very bottom. So let's put this guy back and continue the tour. And yes, so we got to some of the boxes up here. Now I do not keep every box, that would be impossible, but I do keep some of the older boxes and some that have sentimental value to me. One of the most special ones is that Galaxy Explorer one there. And moving on to some more boxes, I do have some other boxes stored in a separate side cupboard. I was also asked where I keep all my manuals, and to be honest, it's not very impressive. I do have them all sorted by theme, but as of right now, they're all kind of jumbled together with all these posters. The reason for that is that eventually I'll put them all in a filing cabinet, but right now, nothing too impressive to look at, so I just have them here. And finally, I thought I'd wrap up the collection by showcasing all of the minifigure playset style Millennium Falcons, which is one of the favorite parts of my collection that I have on my wall in order of the year released, which of course includes the 2018 Ultimate Collector Series Millennium Falcon. Unfortunately, I just finished building the 2007 UCS Falcon a few days ago, so I still need to hang it on the wall. I figured I'd take this time to answer some wrap-up questions. I was asked by Beyond the Brick a few questions. First of all, how do I hang sets from the ceiling? The answer is very simple. It is with fishing line and carefully placed knots, as well as screwable hooks that I can kind of screw into the ceiling. Depending on the set, I either choose to just put it in drywall or I actually do a beam finder and try to find a beam, like the big UCS sets need that. One of the most common questions I get asked about my collection is how do I clean off all the dust? Well, I'm very lucky to have chosen the location to be in the basement where there are no open windows and really all the vents are pretty much covered by Lego shelves. So it's not very well ventilated, but that also means that there's literally no dust that ever will collect on the things. You'll notice that this is a clip of one of the sets that I've had here in the same place for years now, and there's not a speck of dust on it, and I thankfully do not have to take the time to clean it. So I guess it was a happy accident that I chose the basement as the location for the collection. In terms of building custom creations or only sets, it's obviously you can see my priority is sets, although I do really enjoy making mocks with the CCBS system, some of which I had on display, as well as I'm slowly getting into making system mocks with some of the Ninjago stuff that I had in that area. In terms of what my family and friends think of the Lego room, I think they would be excited for the time that I eventually will move out when college is over and transport the Lego collection somewhere else, although it is a very nice thing to look at and have on display. One of the things that I unfortunately wasn't able to show here that I did mention in a Brickset interview that I did earlier were the 3D printed life-size human scale Lego weapons. Unfortunately, those are at my other location, although I do really enjoy 3D printing. I'm very passionate about it and model design, and that's where I kind of came up with these weapons to print. In terms of how my collection is worth, I do have that number on Brickset. It's very, very high, although it's not very accurate because it does only get the retail value of sets, and oftentimes when sets get discontinued, I have to buy them for a high premium off of places like bricklink.com or eBay. That also doesn't include the bulk parts collection I own, as well as the massive minifigure collection that I have separate from sets. So honestly, it's really hard to tell, unfortunately, how much the collection is worth. And in terms of how much money I spend on sets every month, I do not want to know that number either. I buy pretty much every single Lego release the moment that it comes out. So I'm always trying to keep updated on Lego's current releases, except for some themes that I just don't collect, like Friends or City. Nowadays, I don't really collect those. And Technic is one of the ones where I'll only really buy a set if I really like how it looks. But in terms of how often I'm adding to the collection, at least a few sets every week on average, I would say. If I'm not buying from the Lego store, I'm continually buying on Bricklink, and I've been lucky enough to be able to support and afford the collection by hosting a number of side businesses and startups on my own, as well as holding one of my Bricklink stores to sell stuff that I don't need or duplicate minifigs and sets that I no longer need. Alright, well, that about sums up the tour. I wanted to say thank you so much for coming along with me on this tour, and I hope that I was able to share some of the joy that I get by seeing all my Lego displayed, hanging from the ceiling or in shelves or in minifigure wall frames. I hope to be interacting with the Lego community a lot more, and I look forward to seeing all of you around. Thanks, and bye-bye for now.